why we need a modern day masculine initiation. What do we mean with a masculine initiation? Why this is now more important than ever? When we talk about initiation, it's about becoming aware of who we really are and why we are here. It's about moving through experiences that will give us wisdom. But the wisdom only comes when we integrate and embody the experience. We can have a lot of knowledge that we gathered along the way, that we learned, that we studied, but without applying it, it means nothing. It's the same as spirituality. We gather a lot of spiritual knowledge, but without applying, it means nothing than only having a fancy topic to talk about around the dinner table. Real spirituality is entrepreneurship, because that's applied spirituality, because that is really showing up for yourself, for the others through contribution to give and receive. Now, why is this now more important than ever? If we look to the history of mankind, we see we had to go through a lot. But are we really where we are supposed to be? This is of course the question that we have as well as men. Because what's happening, our past experiences is always being projected in the present moment with the expectation that becomes our future as well. So we run on autopilots with our unconscious beliefs, behaviors and ideas around the world. So to get that wisdom, we need to relax so we can take a step back, so we can step up into this helicopter view and see what's going on. And this is exactly what we do here, is to gain awareness about our journey. Why we need the masculine initiation? Let's take a couple of years back. Let's go back to the tribal communities. What happened? Young boys, when they're around 6-7 years old, before that they were really dependent on the nourishment and the care of the mother. We grew up in the womb of our mother. Our mother gave us life. We grew up there. So we were very 100% reliant on the state of being of our mother. But then we became boys. But then what should have happened is that when we were around 7-8 years old, we should depend or become dependent to become guided by a father figure, our father. Now in tribal communities that was the case. The boy was taken out of the safe kind of environment and he went together with a group of other more mature men who went out on the hunt, and the boy became a hunter and a warrior because he had to fight to survive and to provide and support the tribe. This was the case. Now when we look to our life, modern day Western culture, is that really the case? Now I'm going to give you lots of personal examples of, this really comes to the conclusion of why I decided this kind of work, because I had to go through this type of work in order to find my way in life. And when we look to the masculine energy is basically born at the bottom of the valley. And what the masculine energy needs to do, it needs to go through challenge. It needs to go through sacrifice. It needs to suffer, basically. It needs to go through hardship. It needs to experience pain, setbacks, disappointments. Because that is really how he develops his character, how he responds to external challenges. So basically from the valley we need to build ourselves up, climb the mountain. And what's at the top of the mountain, let's say, there we have the divine feminine energy. So it's a balance. The masculine is looking for the divine feminine. And the divine feminine, what she needs is the outside shell, the protection, the protective energy, so she can step in the energy of the pearl. The masculine offers containment and safe container for the feminine energy to flourish. But now when we look online, we see a lot of kind of ideas around masculine energy that is not always that very healthy. So what we do here is we are building a healthy level of masculine energy. But here's the thing, with modern day Western society and culture. We grow up, we are in a starving need for a masculine role model, a father role model. But when I look to my own personal situation, I thought that my father was the example. Because I look up to him. Because he was part of a sailing club and he was part of the commissioning and he had somewhat a leadership role. He was having his own business, he was a hard-working man having a driving school and whatnot. And he had a boat and all these good things. But as a sensitive soul, what I felt and what I noticed, that my mother, she never really felt quite safe with my father. She never quite felt safe and stable with the presence of my father. So when I was around 10 years old, one day, one evening, one night, my father, he woke us up, both me and my brother, screaming, yelling, "Pack your bags, me and your mother, we are going to divorce." And this is what happened. We had to pick our bags and he dropped us off at the place of my grandmother, the mother from my mother. And there we are at. Now, that happened for a couple of months until I decided I do not want to stay with my mother. Because for some reason I don't feel safe with my mother. I need the presence of my father. I walked away a couple of times until my father decided, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to get the custody over you. He had to get a lawyer. Because normally the custody automatically goes to the mother. So basically I had my first case in courthouse when I was around 11 years old, telling the judge with who I want to live. The judge said, okay, we're going to disapprove your requests. This is not how it's going to happen. You're going to stay with your mother. Then I had my second case in courthouse, the higher court, together with my father. And eventually we won this case, so I was allowed to live with my father, but only under the regulation of under a child protection scheme, which continued to happen until I was 16 years old, where someone from social work, child protection services is going to come into your household and decides how you are living. So as you can imagine, my household, there was always conflict, always arguments, always an outburst of anger, aggression and violence. Now I'm not saying it was the fault of my mother, of my father, because I know how we grow up with his father. And we are coming there, because this is really what the work that we are doing as conscious men, recognizing where we came from and what we need to do in order to heal the past, transform the past, but also take key insights and knowledge and wisdom from the past so we can look to our future and decide who we want to become. Anyway, as you can imagine, growing up with an absent father, a mother who was also not there, a father who always silently neglected me, or I felt an emotional, mentally abuse based on his emotional immaturity, aggression and such. And because he also had to survive with his driving school, most of the time I grew up with my grandparents. Now I found my ways to distract myself. From 12 years old I started smoking. 14 I started drinking, because as 14 I also started to have my first job. When I was 16 I started to distract myself with jobs, working 50-60 hours a week next to my school. School, absolutely terrible nightmare for me, because I was always restless and I was always going against the grain, going against the system with lots of resistance. Eventually I had to go through high school. There I really I really exploded more with my anger issues. After high school, I had two options. Go to the Dutch Marine Corps, where I felt like, yeah, this is going to be my place, or go to college. My father forced me to go to college. I had to do something. I went through college quite easily because I found my distractions with having my own side hustle, my car cleaning business that I started when I was 20 years old. I was always busy avoiding the void that existed in me. Then, 25 years old, I survived the corporate world for about 12-13 months, going through depression. But there I found myself, you know what, I need to be in business for myself. When I found books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Why We Want You to Be Rich, and all these type of business books, self-help books, you name it, The Secrets, and lots of it that say, okay, working for yourself, moving from wage slavery to having your own business is going to set you free. So I was always externally focused, adapting to the hustle culture. I worked my way up with starting an online business, going into months of going after the 10-15k per month. And then it happens, the crash, 25 years old, my first crash. What happened? The stress, the anxiety, the need to approve my worth through accomplishments. And eventually my dad was like, yeah, son, I'm proud of you. And that's exactly what I was looking for, to finally listen to that, to listen to these words. After that, I lost my whole motivation, my inspiration, and I collapsed into a burnout. And this is really how my journey started to kick off. I went through lots of spiritual healing workshops following a year and a half of spirit coaching. 2013, because my crash happens 2012. 2013, I burned my ships here in Holland and I moved to London because of a relationship, but also this relationship was completely out of balance because of codependent dynamics. But within London, I lost myself even further. First, I lost my identity, the identity of the hustler, the strong, stoic entrepreneur, always working very hard. But I burned myself in this hustle and grind culture. I felt exhausted, tired, depleted. I lost my fire. In London, I got exposed to survival-based consciousness, acting from this poverty state of minds, moving from job to job to job to job, working taxi driver jobs, working 60 hours and more a week, 12-hour a day, 6 days a week shifts, dealing with lots of anxiety, waking up in the middle of the night with heartburn. Moved back to the Netherlands for about a year, moved back to London. And when I moved back, I felt so lost that eventually I had to look for another way. And eventually I got exposed to shamanism. I followed lots of shamanic healing workshops around soul retrieval, ancestral healing, and this is really how things really started to wake up for me. I completed courses in Reiki, energy healing, and going further. But then eventually it hit to me. I do not longer belong to the hustle, grind, survival culture in London. 2023, I moved back here, back to the Netherlands, because I felt an ancestral call. Because I know here at the Germanic lowlands, aka the Netherlands, I always felt there are ancestral energetic roots here that I need to work through. And this is really was a next level of my perspective. Like I had to face what I was avoiding, my ancestral lineage, my ancestral roots, where that I came from that developed me. What was I avoiding? The void that I always felt in myself, the emptiness, the disconnection, the loneliness, the restlessness, the hyperactivity, the always being switched on to external danger. And this is what I had to look into. For sure, I came here with my stress and my anxiety. The first thing, I got diagnosed with ADHD. Getting medication, which I didn't accept it. But in the way I see it, ADHD has a different meaning to me. For me, it means ancestral development and healing disassociation. Because I already started off this video like maybe for us, where we felt an introverted lone wolf, where we started to disassociate with the environment we grow up with. Because we couldn't relate during our adolescence to our social peers. They were following the normal mundane, and we woke up. This is not the system that was created for me. So we disassociated because we adapt to a state of survival. We switched on. We go into in stress, remote, fight, flight, or freeze. This is the mode where we are in if we didn't have a safe father figure who took us by the hands and turned us from the boy into a man. But we had to figure it out for ourselves. And because we had to figure things out for ourselves through hardship, pain, challenge, setback, sacrifice, we are moving through a dark night of the soul. We are moving through a shadow. We are facing our own inner shadow. And here's the kicker. The light, our light, enters where it hurts the most. So we could say, okay, you know, I look at my family lineage, I see this. Okay, that was very traumatic for us. Our trauma only becomes trauma, our experiences only becomes traumatic if we experience and interpret it as a traumatic experience. Now, as a sensitive soul probably are always born into families with a lot of challenge, because they take it on, and this is how they grow into wisdom, and they grow into becoming a guide. And that's exactly what I want to do here. Now, we could say, you know, the external world is in conflict, and yes, 2026 is the year of conflict. If you go into metaphysics, numerology, yada yada yada, 2026 is a year of conflict. We already see it happening. We can say there's a war going on in Ukraine, Middle East, all of it. But here in the West, there's a psychological war. And those who are conscious and who are aware are starting to see the patterns, who have done the research, who can look above this whole game that's being played out. What we see is that within our biology, we know that we as men, we are tribal. We need brotherhood. We need connection with other men. But what's happening, especially here in Western culture, everybody is living for themselves. They're living in a very individualistic way. People go to the job, they come home, and they spend time with their little bubble family. They don't go out and connect actually and open up with other men that they can feel safe with to express themselves. Because expressing our emotions, for a lot of men, there's still a lot of shame and guilt around that, and it's not a big surprise. Why is it not a big surprise? Because if we look to our ancestral lineage, once again, I give you a couple of examples. My father, he grew up in a very abusive household by his father. If I look to my grandfather, who used to be like a fisherman here in Zeeland, fishing on the mussels, because that was the industry here. Once there was a bad season because of some kind of virus, the fear kicked in, scarcity kicked in, the poverty mindset kicked in, and they started to pull away from being, you know, an entrepreneur and go after safety with regret, with a lot of regrets. He grew old as a very alcoholic person. And when I moved out of here, I moved out to London. He started drinking even more, smoking 2 packs of cigarettes, so he would finish his life even quicker, because he thought my life is done, because yeah, he couldn't influence me anymore. He already started to feel that I wanted to move away from this kind of lineage. But if we look to a generation before, my grandfather, he survived as a young boy the Second World War, but also the major North Sea flood, also a very traumatic experience here in this region. And if we look to his father, my grandfather, they were all fishermen. And fishermen, one thing, they worked hard, they had to not really pay attention to their emotions, come back to the port, drink, smoke, and have a fist fight with the rest of it. So there's this whole pattern of suppressing emotions, addictions, alcoholism, aggression, violence, passed over from generation to generation to generation. This was the why. But for a lot of men, we can't really embody that aspect of us anymore, because we have to be the good person, you know. There's no space for us to really to express that in a normal, healthy way, you know, to play fight with other men, for example. Is to do something with this, convert this energy into purpose, into direction. Because, you know, we have here, also here, like countries like the Netherlands, you know, it's being, entrepreneurship is almost like, yeah, it's dirty, you know, it's very dirty, don't do that, you know, there's a lot of risk and you don't want to do risk, and you know, it's uncomfortable and you can lose everything. And if you're an entrepreneur, you don't have any rights, you don't have any safety nets, you don't have this, you know, you can't get a house and you can't get that, and you need to pay a lot of taxes. And yeah, we see a lot of external influence that for us as men, even when we feel the call, we still continue to be in our safety bubble of comfort, but then we're eating our soul alive. And this is the whole key. So modern day masculinity is getting in touch with a sense of direction, but also is to redefine ourselves. Because what we are doing, once again, I talk a lot about, you know, healing the past, because if we don't heal the past, our body absorbed all this information and we store it inside our body. And if we don't pay attention, I'm going to give you my examples of what I had to go through. Number one is a couple of burnouts, 1 or 2 burnouts. A lot of stress, anxiety. And 2 days I became 40. A couple of months ago, in February. Yeah, I got confronted with cancer. Cancer in my testicle. And I was in Spain. We were setting steps, moving out to Spain to start workshops there. But because of a swelling and a lot of pain, I had to go to the hospital, to the first aid departments, emergency departments, and yeah, eventually had to come back to the Netherlands to seek for treatments. But then, what I learned, even I got to surgery really, really quick, because my testicle had to be removed, the tumor had to be removed. A couple of days later, the doctors, they said, okay, so it's probably spread out to your lymph nodes, and this is always the first things that is being said in the hospitals, you know. And what happened is, when we hear the cancer is being spread out through the cells, we get into another shock, we get into another panic mode. But there is another healthcare kind of science that, of course, the mainstream science, it wants to, you know, label it as something, yeah, really, really dirty, you know, let's say it in that way. Like the man who was researching this kind of science, who was prosecuted and hung up and all of its blackmails, the whole media game being played against him, which was Dr. Hammer from Germany. And he invented the new Germanic medicine, aka Germaanse geneeskunde. I talk here Germanic wellness even before I know about this. And what he said, that our illness and diseases in our body, mentally, emotionally, physically, It starts off in the brain. Because if we go through a period in our life where we respond from our survival, from our stress response, we hold this stress response very, very tight and we store it into the body. And then what happen one day, we can relax, and then what starts to happen is that our mind and body is going through its healing phase. So if we have been in a survival mode for 10-15 years, like I already said, age 25, I started with my survival age 10, age 25, 15 years. I started with my first crisis, the burnout, because I had this need to prove my worth through accomplishments. Now, 15 years later, just become 40. Now I start to see a lot of things, recognize a lot of things, and see what's really going on and where it all comes from. So this is really what I want to share with you. If we have been through a time of stress and feeling lost and all of it, we are going into panic, survival, recognizing what comes after it's the time for healing. And this healing is going to crush our ego, our fake ego based on survival. And this is going to cause an identity shift, an identity crisis. For some men, happens halfway down the 20s, but for the majority happens throughout the 30s, and then after 40, we recognize I am starting to begin my life. So this is really what I want to share with you, is that there is a way, another way, a different perspective, is to offer guidance to help you to become aware of where you are at in your soul's journey through the tools of divination. The tools of divination can help you with a mirror of where you are at in your soul's journey, and then through reflection work, inner work, of recognizing where these patterns come from, so we can start to take a step back and step up in awareness and consciousness. And we are moving through different kind of thresholds where we're moving from one area, one chapter in our life to another, where we need to enter a new kind of door through choice. Choose a different direction. The masculine energy is all about direction. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as we have a direction. And so many of us, and I also have been through that many times, is we freeze. We become frozen because of the fear of what's next. We don't have the clarity. We are the captain, but we are afraid to take on the rudder, the steering wheel, and we are somewhat floating around on this big, vast ocean of consciousness. Are we going to move through the storm and reach our destination? Or the storm becomes so overwhelming and we break the ship and we sink to the bottom of the nothingness, into the void. But then, sometimes we need to go through the void, through the shadow, through the dark night of the soul, through the pain, feel the pain, so we can see where the light can enter. So this is really what I do here, and this is why I've created the wolf tribe. The wolf, power animal, spirit animal in shamanism. What does it represent? The power animal of the wolf, it represents leadership. It is also the hunter. The wolf is hunting in a pack of like minds. It's having very close social bonds. It's very sensitive. It doesn't trust an outsider easily, but once the trust is established, there's loyalty for life until the trust is broken. But also the wolf has a lot of instinct, has a higher level of sensitivity. The wolf sometimes also likes to stand up on the top of his mountain, looking down at the valley to see where the rest of all the peasants are at. So yeah, for sure, the wolf can be sometimes a bit arrogant in his wisdom, which is one of his shadow side. And then he needs to come down his pedestal and go out on the hunt again with his brotherhood with his tribe. And this is really the purpose of shamanic wellness, because we are tribal creatures, we are social creatures, and what we see in the outside world with everything that's going on, with our very individualistic way of life, everybody is living in their own bubble, in isolation, it creates like divide and conquer. It creates isolation between mankind, between brothers and sisters. Women are doing their work, they are stepping up. The question is, are we doing the work as men? So we can build this container of building emotional safety for someone else, for our brothers and sisters. And I think this is really the journey of the soul, is to recognize all these dark emotional patterns, these energies that we have gathered along the way, and see it for what it is. Move beyond the interpretation of the things that happens. Look at our ancestral line, not only from the bad things, but we can also use the wisdom connected with that. We can even go further into archetypes, because within masculine energy we also have like 4 archetypes that we can develop. You know, there are shadow sides to each archetype, and there are the types that we can develop. I've created an app that you can use to see where you're at in each archetype. The archetype of the warrior, the king, the magician and the lover. But there are more. Also from our Nordic Germanic ancestors, there are multiple divine archetypes that our ancestors used to connect with, you know, of how they aligned themselves with. Okay, for me I see them as archetypes, because also from an Carl Jung philosophy, he also spoke about the archetypes, and archetypes is a divine collective consciousness that exists here inside of us. We can connect with. It's not like an external, some say it's an external God, deity, spirit, guide. Okay, different name. For me, they are like archetypes that exist within us. That if we align ourselves with that, we can build ourselves in strength, power, vision, direction, purpose. So this is what we do here, and this is why I'm building the tribe for men, the wolf tribe. So what do we got here? Once again, there will be, of course, many online social events, live streams, calls, workshops, offering one-on-one guidance with the tools of divination. But also there's the app that I developed, the Wolf OS, the Wolf operating system, which I already spoke about. But for us, the community is more where we speak about our journey of life, our spiritual path, the path of the soul, of our path of initiation. But also, of course, how we can keep each other accountable in a healthy, competitive way, because this is what we need as a tribe. This is what we need as a tribal community, is to keep each other accountable, you know, is to hold a mirror in front of each other. How can we grow in responsibility for ourselves and for each other? And when we are alone in isolation, we don't feel the need to be competitive. And we only do that when we are in a tribe. Just here from our ancestors, Germanic lowlands, before the Netherlands was the Netherlands, they were like little tribes working together. They didn't know about each other's existence, and sometimes they fought with each other because of some different kind of ideas. But eventually all these tribes, they united by an external force that came from the south, the Roman invasion. And these histories inspire me, because we can connect with these histories because it still exists within us as well. And then we can go into epigenetics and all of these beautiful crazy things that exist. And that's why I like to combine ancient knowledge, wisdom, mythology with modern day metaphysics, quantum physics, epigenetics, because it can all be connected with each other. Anyway, a lot of information, I've been rambling a lot. I just want to welcome you here at the tribe, at the community. You find the links down below. Join and let's unite, let's grow together, let's get together, and let's see how we can improve each other's life. Alright, so Signing off for now. See you in one of my next videos, and see you later. Talk later. Bye bye.